I wanted to talk about Raspberry Pi boards. And I find it interesting the number of people that say openly say that they like the Raspberry Pi, but I would, they say I would never run one in a production environment. And if they're talking about the traditional $35 all-in-one board, I'm in agreement. If you don't take precautions to protect the micro SD card, if you don't back up your micro SD card on a regular basis, you are asking for an eventual failure. Now, with that being said, there is also the Raspberry Pi Compute Module 4. And just for the sake of argument, I'm going to bring back my screen. So Adafruit is one of the largest distributors, resellers, whatever you want to call them, of Raspberry Pi gear in the US. What I wanted to get at with this, and of course they're showing these compute modules being out of stock. They are showing in stock at Amazon, but the compute module, you can get this with or without Wi-Fi. You can get it with various levels of RAM, and I believe they've got an 8 gig model as well. I'm not seeing it here, but you can also get it with some eMMC on board, which means you don't have to worry about the micro SD card. And so that's a standard feature on some of these models. So for $45, you could get the board with 2 gigs of RAM, 16 gigs MMC, or $65 will get you 4 gigs of RAM and 32 gigs of eMMC. But then, what do you need to make this into a full machine? Well, that's where what they call carrier boards come into play. And you've probably heard of a guy by the name of Jeff Geerling. And he has been tracking these various carrier boards. And some of them are quite interesting. So if we scroll down through this, you've got different carrier boards for the Compute Module 4. For instance, this guy right here uses the standard ATX power supply, but you need an additional I/O board and different things of that nature. And there are just some pretty amazing boards that are available. This one supports an NVMe SSD, M.2 NVMe SSD, and it still gives you the 1 gig Ethernet, the micro SD card slot, and yeah, that opens up some options. You still have access to the GPIO pins. The one that I'm most interested in, and I'll probably get one of these carrier boards just to get myself by for a little while, because I do plan on ordering a Compute Module 4. They have an industrial cluster set up, but the one that has piqued my interest the most is somewhere. They've got a couple of these. This one, and this one. So you've got the ScaleNode server baseboard for the Compute Module 4. Optimized for 19-inch rack mount installation for distributed multi-node computing systems. Includes a power over Ethernet circuit, has an M.2 M key slot for NVMe SSDs, and fits inside a 1U chassis. So that one is very interesting. The next one that I found interesting, and this is still in the prototype phase. Again, you've got your compute module 4, you've got gigabit Ethernet, you've got NVMe SSD. I believe this one has a real-time clock. And it says, for their description, in just one rack unit, up to 16 devices. Each has its own NVMe disk, 1 gig Ethernet with PoE support, micro HDMI, and USB-C ports, up to 128 gigs of RAM, 64 ARM Cortex-A72 CPU cores, and 32 terabytes of storage. And again, that's if you have 16 of these in your one rack unit of space. So this is the one that has caught my eye the most. And their website last night was not working so well. Let's see if that loads up today. It's not looking that great. So let's open GitHub and see. So yeah, this is their little enclosure to put these guys in the one rack U unit. And of course this is all prototype, pre-manufacturing drawings and renderings, whatnot. But there are some pretty interesting things coming. Uplab.pro does not seem to be, but if their board is available at a good price and this rack enclosure is available at a good price, hopefully it's got some fans in the back, this could be a very attractive piece of kit to have around. So there are, of course, other boards. They got some with touch screens. There's some that have more than one compute module for, and it's got an integrated gigabit switch. There's a TV stick with an HDMI port to plug directly into your TV. Just all kinds of interesting things. A NAS box. This Pi Box 2 Mini, powered by Raspberry Pi 4 compute module. An ultra modular 2 or 5 bay NAS. Storage solution for the Raspberry Pi compute module 4. Supports SATA drives and includes HDMI and gigabit Ethernet. So that could be interesting. That does look like a Noctua fan inside there. It's the right color. But this has got me excited again about the Raspberry Pi. They've even got one that's in the format of a Nintendo Switch. And you can put something like RetroPie on it and play all the old classic arcade games and console games and old computer games from the 80s and 90s. So that is pretty interesting as well, especially depending on the size of this LCD screen they put in there.